Well, here we go again. Try again. Let me hobble around to get things organized. I hate Verizon, but I'm stuck with them. Still no live chat. Pop out chat. I had to pop out chat and there is no button to restore chat. Maybe I'm being forced to use YouTube's new, whatever they call it, the new way to set up your shows and stuff. As I said, I'm not a Luddite, but come on, this is too much. I don't seem to have a viable alternative where I live. I'm kind of stuck with Verizon. But I know that my tablet had some mobile hotspot left, but it insists that I used it all, which I know I did not. So now I'm using the remaining hotspot on my phone because my Wi-Fi is not reliable. So anyway, yes, I'm walking around. I did break my hip, but they did not replace my hip. They just put in 2 screws to stabilize the bone where it broke straight across. They kind of smushed into each other. They didn't go like that. They just, anyway, I can't do a lot of walking, and I generally use the cane. And if I'm going out, I use a walker. And at the grocery store, I use the shopping cart as a walker. Yes, I have some pain. Yes, I get tired easily. But it could have been so much worse. Much, much worse. The oh, that is not a critter over there. That's my blanket all balled up and my snow hat sitting on top of it. Tora is nearby, but she doesn't want to greet her fans this morning. Of course, I might convince her. I have sliced turkey, so I might convince her to come over here for a minute. She says, no, you bring my turkey to me. Okay. You don't need to greet your adoring fans. They've seen you before. Anyway, I was going to read from UFOs over California. I keep thinking that it has a yellow, but it's actually red, which makes it hard for me to find it. I really thought that I must have imagined a red glowing orb, kind of orangey red, coming down from the sky in August of 1960, when my older brother got a telescope for his 9th birthday. I was 6 years old and he was 9, and just out of the blue during a phone call, my brother mentioned it years ago. Um, at least 12 years ago, probably more than that. Anyway, it got me started kind of looking around, but I didn't see anything about it. He said it was in the newspaper. We didn't talk about it because Mom wouldn't let us. I believe we must have some missing time because when Mom called us in, we answered right away, but she insisted that we had been ignoring her for a long time. Of course, Mom's idea of a long time might have been 10 seconds, but she wouldn't let us talk about it. Well, I thought I either dreamed it or imagined it until my brother brought it up. And just recently I found facsimiles of the newspaper articles of the time on a review of this here book, UFOs over California. And I know I've mentioned it before. It's by Preston Dennett. All the pages are like cardstock. This paperback is not going to wear out. It's a great book, I guess. It's very journalistic and no hype, no exaggeration, just the facts, ma'am, as they say on Dragnet. Ah, Sleepy Dave, I'm glad you have a job. Don't worry, you can always watch the replay. Tora, you're a standoffish little cat. Hi, kitty. She's sitting nearby, but not in front of the camera. Okay, the Red Bluff UFO Wave. By the time the 1960s arrived, the UFO situation had evolved beyond mere sightings and landings. Ooh, insert eerie Twilight Zone music. Hmm. More and more witnesses reported seeing actual alien entities or being taken on board a craft. At the same time, more waves of sightings were reported over various towns and cities. It seemed as if the UFOs were becoming increasingly brazen, as if they were putting on displays and wanted to be seen. Yep, well, they sure wanted me to see them. Among the among the most prominent of the 1960s encounters is known as the Red Bluff UFO Wave. Well, that's poor grammar, but okay. I'll leave it. Although Red Bluff is named as the location, the wave actually occurred all across Northern California, encompassing the cities of Red Bluff, Willow Creek, Concord, Eureka, Pleasant Hill, Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, Roseville, Mineral, Dunsmuir, Honeydew, and Redlands. For 5 days, beginning on August 13, 1960, literally hundreds of sightings took place. Among the many witnesses were more than a dozen police officers from varying towns. Now, that paragraph gives you the impression that it was only in Northern California. But it goes on. The first sign of the wave was actually the sighting of an unexplained red object over the Southern California city of Hollywood. At 10:30 on the night of August 13, 1960, an anonymous witness reported a glowing red object hovering over the city. A half hour following the Hollywood sighting, a similar, or perhaps the same, object was seen over Willow Creek. For the next 2 hours, reports of at least two red glowing objects came in from nearby Red Bluff. And it goes on to describe the experience of the police officers in Red Bluff. Now, 3 days, skipping a bunch, because I want you to buy the book. If there's a series, if you're in a different state from California, this same publisher has UFOs over Texas, UFOs over Kentucky, and so forth, covering most of our states. And I found it on Amazon. So there. 3 days later, around 8:30 p.m. on August 16, citizens in the town of Corning, I happen to know Corning is just a few miles north of Sacramento. I stayed there once when the storm was so bad I couldn't drive my little rental car up the 5 freeway over Mount Shasta. Well, really not on the mountain, but parallel to it and quite a steep grade. Anyway, in the town of Corning, citizens observed two oval-shaped objects cavorting around the sky. 1 hour later, residents of Eureka reported at least 6 red glowing objects, which moved in formation. 20 minutes after that, the town of Corning was again visited by a boomerang-shaped object. The wave continued on August 17 when Police Captain Hugh McGuigan, Sergeant James Hall, and several other witnesses from Roseville observed two UFOs should be moving, in darting patterns overhead. And skipping a bunch more. Independent anonymous witnesses also obtained film footage of the event, which was forwarded to Project Blue Book. And it doesn't end there. But as I said, it was seen as far south as Baja, California. That little strip of peninsula below California and belonging to Mexico. And it didn't stop in 1960. Then on November 27, 1961, 7 people, including 2 amateur astronomers, observed an incredible display of UFO activity over the town of Chula Vista in Southern California. And skipping a bunch more. On February 27, 1963, 7 witnesses from Modesto described a crescent-shaped craft with portholes, which was seen to hover, descend to an altitude of less than 1,000 feet, emit a bright beam of light for about 15 seconds, and then dart away. The witnesses were so impressed they reported their story to Modesto Bee, that's a newspaper up Northern California, which published their account. On June 26, again 1963, numerous witnesses, including a technician, observed a dramatic display involving a number of green glowing objects over the city of Pinecrest. The witnesses first observed 3 objects moving westwards. These were approached by another object moving from the opposite direction. The objects converged, hovered, then split formation and continued on. Again, poor grammar. You don't continue off, do you? Continued in different directions. On September 14, 1963, UFOs were seen over the small Northern California town of Susanville. Blue Book officers who investigated the case declared the case unexplained. Blue Book Case 8548. I'll put that in the chat. Blue Book Case number. Forgot it already. Uh, Come on. 8548. All right. Now, what I'm thinking is if that experience that I thought I dreamed or imagined, yes, well, someone pointed out that if you fall off the cliff, you do continue off. But other than that, continue on is redundant. You can go on, you can continue. All right, so if I didn't imagine that, if it was real, what about the other things that I've always thought I just had a dream or a daydream and it didn't really happen? Like when I asked my brother about special assemblies at our grammar school. Now, I was 7 years old at the time, got itchies, so he was 10. And he said, "Oh, yeah, some students from UCLA were doing a study on self esteem and leadership in school children." So they did happen. But my memories of what happened when they called students to a special assembly so we could be tested and studied. Well, what I remember has nothing to do with self esteem or leadership. I remember what today we would call remote viewing. Uh, and I remember being in classrooms where we were studying physics and engineering and stuff like that. And when I was in high school, I majored in math and science, mostly physical science. I had 2 years of algebra, a year of geometry, and a year of trigonometry. When I was in college, I did not take courses in algebra or calculus because I didn't have time for it. I'm good at math, but I'm slow, which I discovered in public schools where you spend 45 minutes on each subject, no matter how much time you actually need. So, in the 45 minutes for spelling, I was bored but not allowed to take out my arithmetic or math book and work on that. In the 45 minutes for math or arithmetic, it was not enough time for me. Trigo? Oh, trigonometry. Yeah, well, I thought trig would be as easy as geometry. Boy, was I ever wrong. If I had gone on to study physics in college, I would have had to see, I studied plane geometry and plane trigonometry. In college, you study, I lost the word again. Well, three-dimensional objects. Plane, as in plane, means just a flat surface with triangles or squares or whatever. Solid, they call it. Solid geometry and solid trigonometry. But it's really the same concepts, just extended into another dimension. Anyway, in one of the classes that I might have dreamed or imagined, we were studying a form of propulsion that involved a spinning axle, but for flight. I mean, yeah, your car's axle spins, that's how it goes. But for propulsion in the air or in space, it still seems weird to me. Wow, 23 minutes and I'm out of stuff to say. See, my leg hurts. I cannot tolerate pain pills, and the uh, non opioids like Toradol and Tramadol don't really do anything for me. And besides, and I will not take Tylenol. That stuff is poison, and it does nothing for inflammation. And what I want to do is reduce the inflammation. So, in a hospital setting or a doctor's office, they'll make you accept Motrin or some other brand name of ibuprofen. It's okay, but I want aspirin, and they won't give it to you. I still remember when it was a new thing. I'm sure Tylenol had been out for a while, but I went to the health center on the college campus and asked for an aspirin because I had a toothache. And they handed me a Tylenol, and I said, "This is not aspirin." And they said, "Well, it's the same thing." And I said, no, it isn't. So reluctantly and with an attitude, the woman took back the Tylenol and gave me an aspirin. They think aspirin is bad. Ibuprofen is a little easier on your stomach, so you're less likely to develop an ulcer or bleeding in your stomach. But if you use common sense, aspirin is and always has been a miracle drug. It'll thin your blood, it'll reduce inflammation. Of course, I'd rather have the white willow bark that was the original that the Native Americans used, but that's hard to get. So I end up with the evil Bayer aspirin or a generic brand, which is probably made by Bayer anyway. They're a German company and it's really Bayer, Bayer. And they now own Monsanto. They're evil. Or at least their history is evil. It has to do with the Nazis. But anyway, and aspirin kills pain, by the way. They don't know how it works. They've traced chemical pathways and stuff, and they kind of have an idea. But, in small amounts, if you don't overdo it, aspirin is a really good thing. But it's got a bad reputation in the medical field because ibuprofen is gentler on your stomach and it's almost the same thing as aspirin. So, anyway, eh, Tora's fallen asleep. I'm not going to wake her up just to greet her adoring fans. But let's see if I can point the camera at her. If I unplug the mouse cable so it doesn't tangle, let's see if we can get a shot of Tora. Oh, come on. Don't do that to me. I can't. What, did I reverse the camera? No. Come on. She's on that chair, I think. There she is. I kind of woke her up by saying her name, but there's Tora. She knows she has adoring fans. Okay, let's put the computer back and plug the mouse back in. I hate the mouse pad. It never does what I want it to do. Never. That's better. My house is somewhat decluttered, but I can't find anything. Long story, but if you want to declutter someone else's house, do not put things in. Do not put first aid kits and emergency candles on the floor behind the bed with a bunch of crap piled on top of them. And do not put both fire extinguishers behind the stove where you can't get to them if there's a stove fire. Ugh. Oh, I hope you're busy, Sleepy Dave. It's good to work and earn money. Ay, ay, ay. I'm still reading The Shadow of Blooming Grove about uh, Warren G. Harding, the president um, who was, um, his reputation was stained by the Teapot Dome scandal involving oil drilling. But he actually, it seems he had no part in it, but he he had appointed friends and colleagues to high places, and they were corrupt. And I'm finding many parallels with Richard M. Nixon, so maybe that's why Philip K. Dick dreamed about that book. He already owned it, so he must have at least started to read it at some point. Nixon apparently did not know about or participate in Watergate, but he did try to cover it up. Garfield didn't live long enough to try to cover up Teapot Dome. It was 2 years after he died in office when it finally went to court and there were convictions. Trying to flash a Pic 32. Well, I'm not sure what that means, but I'll bet it's fiddly. Anyway, I really gotta go soon. Oh, a microcontroller. Oh dear. I used to be able to mess with my desktop computer when it had slots, SIM slots. I upgraded a computer so I could play video games on the ones that came on CDs. And I upgraded the video card and put in something that made it run faster. Oh dear, Strontium is seriously into computers. He has a development board. I kind of know what that is because when I had my Commodore 64, you could buy this gadget that would allow you to, you know, more enter Commodore basic code and program stuff. Um, oh well, that was back in the dark ages when I thought I was going to become a computer tech, but I just didn't have the resources to get the equipment I needed to. I wanted to create programs, software, and at the time, around 1982 or 3, BASIC was the language, higher level, not the little 16-digit stuff. Big cheese engineer. Wow. Anyway, for people who didn't want to go in and type 16-digit codes, you could use BASIC. Um, Not no more. Then I think after that was Fortran and then COBOL, and I got to the point where it was like every time I learn a programming language, they replace it with something else. I'm done. Ah. but I wish I'd kept at it. I just didn't have the time, the energy, or the resources to get the equipment and the books, and certainly I couldn't afford the college courses. Even at our junior colleges, which used to be free, they now have fees for each class and horrendously expensive books. Yeah, assembly language is, you basically have to have what my grandfather used, a book that shows all the codes and what they mean. He was an engineer, and he had things like what's the sine or cosine or whatever of some number and stuff like that. Uh, I once knew how to use a slide rule. I still have a slide rule, but I don't remember how to use it. It does have a little instruction booklet, so I could use my slide rule if I had to. I know I'm smoking too much. Some people think that smoking one cigarette is too much. Anyway, it's like I used to know all that stuff, but I am slow at math and slow at computer codes, programming codes. So, oh well, maybe someday, but I have to write my second murder mystery, my book about the exegesis, my second in a planned trilogy about, sorry, fingernail shredded, and it was catching on things. I have to write the sequel to Fallen Angels. Darned if I can remember what the title is, but the file's somewhere on my computer. No, the murder mystery is just kind of a young version of Mrs. Fletcher on Murder, She Wrote. She is not an author like Jessica Fletcher. She starts out as a fake gypsy fortune teller and ends up as a private detective. No science fiction involved. Oh, that's not quite how you spell Lansbury, but I can't remember the correct spelling. So let's see. Angela, I think it's with a U. Yeah. Um, evil thing. Come on. Evil mouse, evil computer. I lost the chat box. Come on. It's like this. Lansbury. Google to the rescue. I'm not positive, but I think she's still alive. And she had a small house with a nice garden in, I think it was West Hollywood, might have been North Hollywood. Somewhere I have or had a VCR, a videotape of her being interviewed at her home. And she was like Irish, living and working in England. I don't know for sure that she was born in Ireland, but she's definitely Irish. And I'm fascinated by the way she's mastered so many accents, but in the interview, she definitely has an English accent, not Irish. And quite a lady. She played the floozy in the movie Gaslight. And I'm sorry if you don't like black and white movies. You're missing out on quite a lot if you don't watch black and white movies. I grew up with black and white television. Even the cartoons were black and white. So you forget and you remember things in color even though you watched them in black and white. But how could you not watch The Maltese Falcon or Treasure of the Sierra Madre? Oh, that's also what's his name? Um, how can I forget that name? Humphrey Bogart. Thank you, Strontium. You need to realize that the chat runs a little behind me talking. So I've moved on when I see the chat. Let's see. Of course, in the movie theater, Sleeping Beauty was in color. You know, movies were generally in color, but on television, I was stuck with black and white. And the producers, all the techies and so forth, used to make sure that even though it was in color, it would look good in black and white for when it went on television. Let's see. But Fallen Angels is a science fiction novel. It isn't really about angels. It's about extraterrestrials coming to Earth because their planet blew up. And the second volume will kind of parallel Noah's flood. And I'm sorry, I'm still blank on my own title. I don't remember it. But I have to write it. And of course, I'm most proud of The Darkening of the Light, my science fiction novel about, well, it's more fantasy than science fiction, really, but it's about people getting implanted with computer chips in their brains and what could go wrong. Yeah, typical aliens only show up when they need something. Well, these aliens are pretty much human, but in the novel they meet Adam and Eve. So it's going to get complicated. And if I didn't just imagine it, if it really happened, some aliens told me that they'd been in space so long that they couldn't reproduce, they couldn't have children. They also had embarked upon a genetic engineering program, a form of eugenics, to improve their race, only that also made it difficult for them to reproduce. And they looked quite human, maybe a little taller than average, a little better looking, some of them with movie star good looks, but I might have imagined it. That would have been around 1970 to 72. Before I met Philip K. Dick, when I was not into science fiction, and yet I had all these weird experiences. Hmm, I just don't know what I imagined or dreamed and what really happened. I'm kind of like Phil when he said in his speech in Metz, France, his memory came back full, complete, entire. He remembered everything, but he didn't say what he remembered. I happen to know what he remembered. He had been abducted when he was in Canada in early 1972 by humans, apparently. Might have been men in black, but we didn't know anything about men in black back then. I imagine John Keel knew, but we didn't. Someone sent me some books by John Keel, and I haven't actually read them, I've only skimmed them. But one, of course, is titled Men in Black. So, anyway, um, what was missing in that scenario was why. And it was simply a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They must have thought that Phil had something to do with Dr. Timothy Leary's escape from jail. He didn't. But when you come to the attention of the authorities, they always remember you, but they don't remember why or how you came to their attention. And they never forget you, and they suspect you of everything. I've experienced that on a very minor level. Very minor. Some cop said, "You look familiar. Have I arrested you?" Well, I've never been arrested. Technically, when you get a traffic ticket, you've been arrested. You've been stopped, pulled over, and stopped. But no, I've never been taken to jail or any of that stuff. I just had a speeding ticket, and it wasn't that cop, so I don't know what was with him. Maybe he was one of the ones who responded when my neighbors suffered a home invasion. We didn't have the term home invasion then. And it was just some drunk guy who was also on speed, who just was throwing a fit over something stupid. I was a witness. I wasn't even involved. Yeah, strontium. If you're driving too slowly, they think you're drunk. And if you're holding up traffic and you didn't pull over and let the other cars go, that is an offense that can get you a ticket. Even if you're going the speed limit, if the cars behind you want to go faster, you have to let them go. And the reasoning is they might be on their way to the emergency room and it's urgent. So you have no right to slow them down even though they are exceeding the speed limit. It's not your job to enforce the speed limit. But usually, if you're driving too slowly at 3 a.m., they think you're drunk because the bars close at 2. So actually, from about 10 p.m. onward, if you're driving too slow, you're suspected of drunk driving. Anyway, so, metaphorically, night shift at work, you were tired. Yep. Oh, now Tora wakes up and starts doing cute stuff. I really gotta. It's time to do my stinking exercises and take some aspirin and get something to eat. I, I'm not a morning person. I don't want to see food when I first wake up, let alone eat food. But it's 10 in the it's quarter after 10 in the morning here. I think I can manage a bowl of cereal. And I need all kinds of dairy products for the calcium while my bones heal. And fortunately, I don't have a problem with dairy. So I can get calcium from my food and not just from a pill. Anyway, I really gotta go. Thank you all for listening. Let's put that in chat and scoot on out of here. Let's see. I guess I'm going to have to check out YouTube's new studio, figure out how it works, because the old system isn't that, it's really clunky. Okay, catch you later.